Why is it so hard now? I'm like
Mhm.
analyzing what chord extension is that, and what inversion are they using? What's in the bass? I don't even know. No, like it doesn't have to be that.
The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
Hey there, and welcome once again to the Future of Music podcast. I am Ryan Withrow, one of your hosts. I am joined by my wonderful, lovely co-host, Jonathan Boyd. And I mean, it's like, I feel like people can just say it. I could just leave silence at this point, but we'll say it anyway. You know why we're here. We're here to show you how to survive and thrive in the future of music. And today's going to be a little different. Yeah. We're going to take people on a different journey here. All right. Because we have to. I felt in my heart that this was a required conversation and focal point of the episode.
And it was in the contract.
And it was in the contract. Yeah, absolutely. Necessary, 100%. But today is a little different. It sparks from a conversation that I had with you, John. You know, a lot of times we talk in between. We'll have conversations before the podcast. We'll have conversations after. We'll nerd out in between recordings. We hang out virtually all the time. And we like to talk about this music stuff. Shocker. I know everybody's kind of amazed that what these guys talk about music stuff and technology and AI. Had no idea. And in one of these times that you and I were talking, you mentioned something just like almost in passing to me at first. And I remember being like, whoa. Hold that conversation. It was all about something you've been working on in the background. And it was one of those moments where I realized we needed at least 812 episodes dedicated to it because it was such an interesting topic. We'll only do one. We'll try to cram 812 into one. But yeah, for me, man, I'm excited for everybody because as we were talking, I'm just sitting there as a listener, just like anybody else, realizing that when we're talking about the future of music, you know, we start talking about this wonderful landscape potentially of AI music education stuff. We start thinking about, well, who's going to lead the charge for using technology in music education and like growing that space in the future, other than, I don't know, somebody that's done it so well in the modern day, in like today, 2023 and before this, but also the big conversation, the reason I think we have this podcast, because of what you're working on, and we'll get into it, don't worry. What does that mean in terms of improving, growing, and scaling the entire world of music education, music in general, with things like AI technology as we continue to grow? So we're going to get into that. All right. We're going to get, but first, make sure you subscribe. That's a big thing I have to mention. Okay. So subscribe, do the like, do the alert, and I'll even make sure that the video part forces you to watch something that shows you how to do that real quick. Because I've started doing that. So I'm sorry, not sorry. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you click the alerts. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast platform. But John, I kind of want to just dive in, man. So I made it very mysterious. All right. Nobody knows what this is. And I don't even think you know that I was going to have a full conversation with you on this either. But I think you know what I'm talking about at this point. So I think really, let's just dive in. I want to start with this whole concept that we've had and the idea of music education. All right. And how it is and how it's been. You've said it many times that it's been the same forever. And again, it looks like there may be a change coming to that. So, let's just dive in. Let's talk about music education, how it is. All right. And let's talk about what your brain has been focused on to make it way better.
Yeah. So as far as something changing, I think we'll get to that. But let's back up in terms of, I think that even the phrase music education turns people off because if you go through, grade school or something and you have a class that's called music appreciation or music education, it just sounds boring. It just sounds like, you sit in a classroom and clap your hands, and everybody had that experience in middle school. And, obviously you went to college for music, and that whole academic music experience kind of, I think, turns a lot of people off. And that's not really what we're talking about. So let's just call it learning music, like learning how to play music, right? So as far back as I've been able to research, and I've done a lot of research over about this over the last few years, humans have learned how to play music the same way as far back in history as we can find, right? And what I mean is, other than singing, and we'll get to that later. Singing is a form of an instrument, your vocal cords, but humans have always had something like a tool, a thing that we call an instrument, a musical instrument. And they've always had to learn how to navigate, how to use this thing, right, to produce musical sounds or music or pleasing sounds out of this thing. Now, there's a couple of things that go along with that. But first, I'll mention what I've been able to find is the oldest musical instrument I think that anybody's discovered so far is actually a caveman flute, literally from the Neanderthal days. And I think it's in a museum in Slovakia, and I've seen dates as old as 61,000 years ago. 61,000 years ago for a flute. It's like a bone flute, right? So if that's true, I've actually seen dates anywhere from 61,000 to 43,000 years, about that old. But that's old. That's really, really old, right? So we can assume that, 50,000 years ago, humans were musical, like they were trying to express music of some type. Maybe they were sitting around a fire and somebody was playing a flute or something. Same thing that we do today, right? But we have evidence that humans were doing that long ago. So that actually tells us a couple things. Number one, the desire to create music, the desire to express that sound, and maybe even in a collective, like a circle, like I said, like sitting around a campfire, which is something we still do today. That desire is there, that desire for maybe connection, enjoyment, enjoying the family, enjoying the circle, enjoying the tribe, whatever it is. Um, you know, at least 50,000, 60,000 years ago, that was a thing. And we can assume, many, many years before that, it was also a thing. So there's been this innate desire for us to express some kind of something within us, right? We call it music within us. And so that's the first thing that we can get from that. The second thing is, since that time, since we don't know anything before that about musical instruments, since that time, humans have been playing musical instruments. So fast forward, there was, like the piano and the violin and eventually the guitar and now the electric guitar and whatever kind of instruments. I mean, guitars have advanced, other instruments have advanced, but it's still a musical instrument. It's still an object or a thing or a tool that you have to interact with, like a saxophone or a trumpet. And you have to learn uh, how to maneuver the thing, how to manipulate the thing to get sound to come out. So there's two things I want to say about that. There's two things that have to happen for a person to be able to do that, to be able to produce music. Number one is you have to have mechanical facility. That sounds fancy. That's like a $10 phrase right there. Mechanical facility to be able to produce the sound that you want to produce. So what I mean is, if you get a guitar or if you get a saxophone or whatever it is, you have to get your fingers. Not only do you have to learn how the instrument itself works, like on a saxophone, what buttons do I push, right? On a guitar, how do I move the frets? How do I move the strings? Where do I put my fingers? How do I do it? And how do I get my fingers actually in shape to be able to do it? And that takes a long time, right? It's really hard. No human was born being able to move their fingers around and play guitar, or a saxophone or a trumpet. It's just not natural. So clearly, it takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of years, takes a lot of perseverance, and frankly, a lot of pain, because it's painful to go through those stages of doing all that. It takes a lot of dedication. But for some people, that's not even the hardest part. I think if it was just physical, a lot more people would play music, but it's not. It's also mental. And when I say it's mental, I don't mean that it's something that you have to be smart or that you have to have natural talent like a lot of people believe. And I'll get to that in a second. What I mean is, you have to understand how music works in order to produce the right sound at the right time. And when I say how music works, most people don't understand, or they don't think about the idea that music is a language. So just like we're speaking in English right now, there are a lot of different types of spoken language. The purpose of language is to communicate ideas. The purpose of, spoken language is to communicate ideas. Music is also a language, but it communicates emotions through sound. Okay, so music is a language that communicates emotions through sound. Now, everybody that I've ever known and everybody that I've ever learned about in history learned to talk before they went to school. So they learn how to actually communicate and talk to their parents or talk to their peers or whoever it is, and at least communicate in some way before they actually went to a quote academic setting, right?
True.
So when it comes to music, the equivalent of the academic setting is, yes, there's actually schools and academic settings, but what I mean is the whole concept of music theory. So most people who go beyond, the very first attempt at trying to play music, you run into this concept of music theory. And most would-be musicians or attempting, musicians or people who are trying to play guitar or trumpet or whatever instrument for the first time, when you run into this concept of music theory, it becomes this, number one, this huge, daunting, kind of depressingly overwhelming wall that you have to go in that direction to be any good at it. And we, as a society, collectively believe that learning the path to being able to play music and sounding good at it is by going down the path of learning all this music theory. And we have this belief that, the pros that we see up on stage or all the amazing musicians throughout history are just like somehow super smart. They're just way smarter than all of us. They see things we don't see. They have a PhD in music or something like that, and that's just not true. Some people actually do have a PhD in music, but that's a whole different story. What I'm getting at is the belief that you have to walk down the path and learn all of this bunch of music theory in order for you to finally sound musical and play music and communicate in the language of music is 100% false. The only way you can sound good and soulful and musical is by start doing it today. Remember, humans learn to talk and communicate before they go to school. It's not about learning the grammar. The music theory is the grammar part. Sure, some of it can be useful, but learning how to talk and communicate is where the playing is. That's how you learn to actually play music. So I know this has kind of been a long story arc here, but I mean, we had to go back 60,000 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so far, we've established that all that time, 60,000 years at least, humans to play music, number one, they've wanted to play music. Number two, they've had to have some kind of a musical instrument to be able to play that music. And more recently, in fact, from my research, modern music theory was invented, or at least started to be invented by have you ever heard of the Pythagorean theorem? Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher, in about 2500 BC, around that time. So music theory as we know it today is old. We would consider it ancient technically, but it's really not that old considering the first flute was, 50, 60,000 years ago. It's really not that old. It's fairly new actually. But the point is, today's, would-be musicians or people who are interested in music, we have the problem of, number one, you have to learn an instrument, which is really hard, takes a long time, really frustrating. And you have to, or you at least think that you have to climb the wall or climb the ladder of music theory.
Mm-hmm.
So those two huge things, those two huge blockades are actually what keep people from learning music. In fact, Fender did a study where they found that, Fender, the guitar company, the music company, they did a study where they found that 9 out of 10 guitar players who pick up the guitar for the first time quit within the first 12 months. 90% of people quit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's another Gallup poll that I found recently that showed that 82% of adults wish they could play a musical instrument. Okay, so that's more than 80%, between 80 and 90% of people who have either tried and failed or wish they could play a musical instrument. And a lot of people actually have tried. Most people just can't actually do it. And
Yeah.
the reason I say they can't do it is not that they can't do it, it's that they think that they can't do it because of the two things that I mentioned earlier. Number one, you have to play a physical instrument, which is extremely hard to do. And number two, most people think they need to like buy the books called 1,000 Chords You Need to Know, or buy all the scale books and learn how to read music and all that. And that's just complete BS. You do not need to do any of that to get on stage and play. For example, like Eric Clapton, never studied theory, doesn't know how to read music. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Prince, we can go on and on and on and on. Eddie Van Halen, right? These guys didn't,
Mm-hmm.
quote, study theory. They didn't study music in the normal way. So how are they able to do that? Well, there must be something else. There must be some missing information that we don't know. And I'll leave it there and hand it back to you. But I'll first say that the common thread through all of this is that humans have this desire, we have this music, we have this thing, this passion, or whatever it is inside of us to want to express it, right, in a musical way. There's that desire there. So I'll leave it there and I'll hand it back to you for now.
Yeah, good. I would also add, as somebody that has been through, the music education system, I think that two things. One, the way we teach now, at least from my perspective, sure, it works for a lot of people, which is great. But it doesn't work for everybody, and that's the problem. It's just it's almost like I look at it as like I have to be special to even understand this. Like I have to be
Mm-hmm.
smart to even get this thing.
Yep.
Even though like I'm paying somebody to teach me, I'm still like something's wrong with me at this point. I'm not picking it up. But then you
Mm-hmm.
start to realize two things. One, I think the way we teach, where it's just this curriculum that's been the same for who knows how long at this point in colleges and high schools, middle schools, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how long it's been the same exact copy and paste curriculum. I feel like one, you kind of take people who are really wanting to connect with music in a very inspiring way and like emotional and just really want to express themselves and be able to have fun and enjoy it. And you're kind of putting them through this, it's been done a million times this way system. And for
Yep.
me, at the end of it, when I was done with college, it was kind of like a disappointment. Not because
Mm-hmm.
I was sad that I went through college, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but because I felt like I was trained how to do it just in a generic copy and paste way. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like I spent 4 years, 5 years training myself to express me and how I want to play and what I want to sound like. I had to sound like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those things that happens. But I would also say that we're going to kind of go back to the actual curriculum. So when we think about non-personal touch, that's the big thing. That's the non-personal touch of somebody going in, being like, I'm ready to learn guitar. Let's play classical guitar. Let's go to school for it. Let's do it. I got to get this book that is mass produced. Half the colleges in the world use it. I got to go through the same lessons that somebody else prepared without even talking to me or knowing me. They don't even know me personally, but I have to do this thing. This is the prescription, right? This is the doctor's prescription. It's like going to the doctor almost, man, and being like, hey, I'm ready to tell you what's wrong with me, and having him be like, no, 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 you don't have to. You just take these pills. It's
Yep.
great. It'll help. There you go. And you're like, but yeah, you didn't even ask me what was wrong with me. Like I didn't even get to tell
Mm-hmm.
you. And he's like, that's fine. Works for the majority of people. Um, so I feel like we're in that issue, at least somebody being through this. So I'm hearing you say these things and agreeing in the way that is like, yeah, I wish I hadn't. I think that's a big thing. I wish I hadn't spent years learning other people's stuff because
Mm-hmm.
even last week, man, when I was playing guitar and I was trying to think of a part, somebody threw like a note that didn't fit into a scale at me, and I don't like it. I'm like, no, 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 like that it doesn't fit. I don't like that. It feels weird. But who's to say I wouldn't be completely open to that if I hadn't been drilled for 4 years on the way music theory properly works and you got to do
Mm-hmm.
it this way. So, that was my ramble for saying like it's one of these things that works for people. I get it. It works for a lot of us. But what is work? I guess. What is the quote? What is works? If works is you're playing other people's music and that's all you wanted to do, okay. If works is you want to follow somebody else's guidelines for your own creativity, okay. If you don't want personalized, like I'm talking to somebody, here's my problem. Oh, what do you know?
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a direct solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing, and that's kind of what I want to dive into here. Is this idea of not teaching music or the language of music, even right? In this just blanket style where it's
Mm-hmm.
one way, that's it. That's all you got. If you don't understand it, you're dumb. Sorry. Like that's the end. That's what we all feel like because that's the way
Yep.
it's built. So
Yep.
let's talk about potentially a new way of thinking about it as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you made a lot of great points, and let's talk a little bit about the lay of the land of how things are right now and how they got there, as it relates to the big background story that we just did. And then I think it will make sense to be able to understand how things can change now with these new technologies that we've been talking about, which we'll get to. So we mentioned the whole idea that ever since we know in history for tens of thousands of years, probably hundreds of thousands, maybe even longer, humans have had to have a musical instrument to play music with, and they have to have some understanding of how the language of music works. Now, fast forward to, Greek times. Sounds funny, right? Fast forward to Greek times. And then a little bit past that, when modern music theory was invented and then, kind of more developed and kind of transformed into what we have today, well, the modern musical system was created. And the idea of having a quote teacher or somebody who teaches you how to play like an instrument, for example, that's never changed. There has never been a change to that. It's still the same. You still go down the street to your guitar teacher, your trumpet teacher, whatever. You still take classes with a saxophone player or whatever it is. And then also the music side of things, as music developed, kids who go through school, of course, they still learn how to read music. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but as you said, it works for you said it works for a lot of people. And I just want to make a distinction that it works for a lot of people by volume, meaning like
Mhm.
a volume of people. But compared to the rest of people, it's almost nobody that it works for, right?
Yep.
Remember, 90% of people, between 80 and 90% of people, can't and wish they could. That's almost everybody, right?
Yep.
So technically, it doesn't work. It's a terrible system, in my opinion. And so if we fast forward, if we go through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then now going up into where we have the internet, what has happened is the same thing that happens with any market. Let's assume any new market like the San Francisco gold rush, right? When somebody heard there was gold in California and San Francisco in 1849, all the people started rushing to San Francisco. What happened? Same thing that happens with every market. All the people rush in, all the gold gets taken, the market is saturated, and there's no more opportunity left. Okay, so it's kind of like a pond. If there's somehow a new lake bed that's formed and it rains, that lake bed is going to fill up until it's full. And once it's full, it can't fill up anymore. It's full already. The water has to go somewhere else. So what I mean is, as we progress through, let's say, the last century, where we had more modern technology. Of course, we have books, but eventually we had computers and methods of learning music. And the methods of learning music have been, up until now, a new medium of the same old thing. A new medium meaning through the internet or online or courses or books or Amazon or whatever it is, of learning the same old thing, which is let's learn how to read music, let's learn this theory, then let's learn this other theory, then let's learn this other theory, and you still have to learn an instrument like a guitar, piano, whatever. If that's fine. Now, pianos and guitars and musical instruments are going to continue to exist, right? The main thing that we're talking about here is how are people going to learn music in the future and what's going to be possible with this new technology, specifically with some of the things that we've been working on. And if we think about the idea that if you go out there now, let's say you go on the internet, you go on YouTube, there's a billion guitar gurus on YouTube who they're all pretty much doing the same thing. There's a billion books on Amazon that you can go to any college. And let's just take those three for an example. Let's say YouTube videos and books on Amazon, and let's say music school, right, at college. All three of those things are actually not meant to, at the core, not meant to turn you into a good musician. The YouTube videos are designed for the YouTube gurus, who are making videos to get more views on their videos. Why? Because they want ad revenue. The books on Amazon are made to sell. They're not necessarily made to get you results. The colleges, same thing. They're made to sell, semesters, degrees, whatever. It's a business. A college is a business. So, I mean, you can probably attest to this. Probably 80% of the stuff you learn in college is a complete waste of time in terms of you actually playing music and actually understanding what you're doing, et cetera, because it can be crunched down and learned a whole lot faster. But they have to fill it up with fluff and things that seem official, that, music history, and you study what the arch friends Ferdinand Duke of so-and-so did in 16 whatever, you know what I mean? Just because,
Yeah.
right? Just because
That guy.
that's your class, right? But anyway, not to crap all over those methods. Like you say, they do work for some people, but the current system, in my opinion, is a miserable failure. When you have a 10% success rate, that's a miserable failure. That's awful. If you go to any classroom and somebody gets a 10 on their test, that's like the dumbest kid who's ever been in any classroom. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like that's F F F F F F F. It's horrible. So why do we think that that's a good passing grade with music education? It's stupid. I'll say how to play music, right? So that's a bit of how things are now, why things are the way that they are now. And when I mentioned the analogy of the pond, the whole idea of people teaching, let's say, guitar courses and piano courses and YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff, it's saturated. It's not going to get any better. It's not going to get more full. And part of the reason for that are the incentives. So again, the YouTube creators are incentivized to make videos that people click on, not videos that make people better at playing music. Some of those may overlap, but that's not the core incentive. Same thing with the Amazon books, same thing with the schools, etc. So here's another fancy $10 word for you. The state of music education and modern technology up until now has reached homeostasis, where it's not going to change. It's reached that steady state point where, guess what? 10% of the people are going to learn, and they're going to learn really fast. And 90% of the people are going to watch from the sidelines. The interesting thing is, it looks like there's a lot of people who are really good at guitar, really good at piano or whatever, because you go online and those are all the people that you see. Because all the people who can are the ones who are posting videos and trying to post all their stuff. But that's not true. The reality is 80 to 90% of the people try and they can't do it. And they can't do it. So now let's go a little bit forward and talk about some of the more modern technology stuff that exists now that's going to be possible that that we're working on as well. It's going to enable some of these kind of new breakthroughs, in my opinion, that's going to be as big as something like electricity or the steam engine or the invention of the television or something like that. It's going to be very, very huge transition. It's another huge pond that's about to get filled, right? So far, one of the biggest problems that has existed with a modern method of learning music is getting your questions answered. Sure, you can relate to that, right? You go on YouTube, there's a video, somebody's talking too fast, they don't actually care about what you want. They're just putting out a video and you're like, "Wait, but what about this? What about that? What about this?" And let's just be honest, most of the people in the comments are almost brain dead. You can't get any real answers, right? So you're sitting there alone in your bedroom or in your house, and let's just assume you're learning guitar and you can't get the answers. You can't move forward. You get stuck. You don't know how to move forward. You can go out there and buy another book, but you have the same problem all over again. It's the same cycle over and over again. And as a result, most people just get stuck. Now, for the people who go to school, it's a little bit of a different story, because if they continue to finish school, and a lot of people drop out, if they continue to finish school, then they have a similar situation to what you said, Ryan, which is, yes, I finished school, but they don't really get what they're looking for, right? So part of it is the question answer thing, getting your questions answered. And actually, before we go super weird with the new technology stuff, let's actually pause it there and talk about one of the things that we're working on in this brand new platform. It's called MusicMentor.AI. So we're going to be incorporating, obviously, AI technology into learning music, and there's going to be a lot of other advancements that we're going to talk about here in just a second when we get to it. But I want to make sure we go one at a time so it's clear, because this is a lot of stuff. It's new, right? We talk about this all the time, but if this is the first time you're hearing about this, it's kind of like, whoa, what is this? What are you talking about? So first thing is getting your questions answered, right? Actually, let me back up. The zeroth thing, the very fundamental thing is this. The current system has a 10% success rate. We're developing a new system, right? We want to have a 90%, ideally 100%, but nothing's perfect in this world. We want to have a 90% success rate. So the general question is, how can we get 90% of all the people who ever want to play music out there actually playing, understanding what they're doing, and freely expressing themselves in the language of music? How do we solve that problem? It's a really, really big problem, global problem. Now, in fact, if we want to put a number on it, 80 to 90% of people, there's 8 billion people in the world, 80 to 90% of people is in the ballpark of 6 to 7 billion people. That's a lot of people. That's a massive problem. It's a huge problem. So that's what we're looking to solve with this. So first thing is questions, getting your questions answered, okay? How can you, we asked the question, what would it be like, or what would have to happen in order for me to sit in my room and instantly get my questions answered accurately for wherever I am personally? And you mentioned this earlier, that most of the quote mass market solutions out there are just like the doctor handing you pills before they even ask you what's wrong with you. It's like, yeah, just do this. Well, that doesn't work. Clearly, doesn't work for 80% of the people. So getting your questions answered. Well, I think pretty much everybody who would listen to a podcast like this called The Future of Music has probably heard about ChatGPT, right? Or something like that, Bing Chat, whatever it is. There's a number, Bard, Google Bard, there's a number of different AI models out there similar to that. But let's just say ChatGPT because I think it's the most popular one, right? So ChatGPT, the basis behind ChatGPT is it knows all of the information on the internet, and you can ask it a question, it will tell you. Hey, ChatGPT, what are the 5 most expensive cars in the world? Hey, how many strikeouts did Babe Ruth, how many times did he strike out in his career? Something like that. It's going to tell you, right? So there's a couple of things about this. Number one, we asked, well, what if we can do that for music? How can we do that for music? Have an instant personal answer where an actual AI machine knows you, knows about you, knows about your journey, knows about your history, and it knows all the world's musical information from all the top, educators, all the content, all the stuff that's ever been created out there. And how can it deliver the exact answer that you need at the exact time for you? Now that's amazing on its own. And the second thing is this. If you think about the way music is taught now, you literally learn from a person. That person can write a book and give it to 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever, but it's coming from a person, right? A YouTube video is coming from a person. If you're sitting in a live lesson with somebody, the information is coming from a person. Now, there's a problem with that. No person knows everything. And actually, there's a few problems with that. No person knows everything. The person who you're learning from, whether it's through any medium, right? A book, video, course, workshop, doesn't matter, may not know how to communicate in the style in which you learn. So for me, for example, I learn through analogies and quotes. That's how I store information in my brain. But
No.
other
You? You?
other other people learn through, let's say, repetition, memorization. There are other modes of learning, reading, right? There are other modes of learning. So there's a mismatch there. Number one, the teacher doesn't know everything that there is to know. They also have a limited learning style, which you may or may not be able to learn from. And also they have a perspective. So their perspective is based on their unique personal experience. And if that doesn't match where you're trying to go, or their area of expertise doesn't match what your goals are or what you're trying to do, you have a mismatch. It's a bunch of points of failure. It's like a pipe, water flowing through a pipe. Here's your analogy. Water flowing through a pipe with a bunch of holes in it. And you have so many chances for leakage. And by the time the water gets to the end, there's barely any drops at the end. You don't even make it to the end, right? And that's the standard. That's the standard of how it works. So not only we asked if we can, how can we get any musical question answered at any time instantly by a machine, an AI machine that knows literally everything about music and the history of music ever, and also knows you and can deliver the perfect answer for you in your learning style at the right point in your journey to tell you how to get to the next step. Nobody would ever get stuck. Right? So we would eliminate that problem. Now, I know I've said a lot, so there are a few other key pieces of technology that have been emerging now that enable us to do a few other things that will, in my opinion, transform the way people learn music in general. But I'm going to hand it back to you there to get your thoughts and just let's catch up a little bit before we move on to the next piece.
Thumbs up is my thought. Yeah, there are two other things that, as you're talking, when I think about currently going to a teacher, going to YouTube, going to anything, the one big thing that I think we all fail to think about when we're searching for things is that if somebody hasn't experienced the exact problem you're experiencing, they can't teach how to fix it.
Yep.
They just can't. So in other words, if, I go to a teacher and I'm like, man, I'm learning guitar. My pinky is it's like, it's not moving properly. Like it freezes up a little bit when I switch from this chord to this chord. And if they've never experienced that issue, they're just going to be like, oh yeah, just do this thing a couple times. That should fix it right away. And you're like, you don't know where I'm at. You don't know where I'm at. Like you have no idea. So that's one thing. But then the other is when I started hearing you talk about this, the value I thought of instantly, like in my brain, the image I had was going to YouTube when you have a problem and being like, my problem's very specific. Let's say I have a problem going from the 5th fret of the B string to the 10th fret of the B using an index and a pinky. How do I do that? You can't type that in.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it doesn't work. Like there's no specific, I guarantee you, there's no specific video called how to move from fret 5 to 10 on the B string with index and pinky. Like it just doesn't happen. So instead,
Mm-hmm.
what do? We try to think of a search term or something that would maybe include it. And then we dig through 8 videos, 10 videos, 12 videos. Before we know it, we've wasted our whole potential practice session and
Mm-hmm.
we've learned nothing and we're going to have the same problem tomorrow.
Yep.
So when you started talking to me about this, that's where my brain went was, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that's the potential ability to be like, hey, I have a problem on the B. I can't go from 5 to 10 with my index and pinky. How should I fix it? And it's like, got you. We'll
Exactly.
fix this. That was the most incredible part for me because again, if they don't know the problem, if they've never experienced the problem, they're not going to give you a solution that's proven. That's a
Mm-hmm.
big thing. They'll give you a solution. It might work, but like I'd rather like know how to fix it. I think
Mm-hmm.
if we had a lot of instruments and people learning instruments where they knew every answer they got, that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That is when I think a lot of people would be like, great, I'm loving this. Instead of being like, no, my teacher told me this. It's not working. I must suck. I must
Yep.
really suck at this.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's just really amazing stuff. And that's just, just a ramble on where my brain picture went when you started talking about this, but I'm into it.
Yeah, so let's keep going from there about other problems that this solves, right? Where it's the general idea of building a better mousetrap, but really a better system. And I'm going to get to that system in a moment. Let's talk about the second piece. So the first piece is getting your questions answered. That's a fundamental piece of learning music. If you can't get your questions answered, you ain't learning music. You're just not going to be able to do it. And you're going to get stuck, frustrated, and you're going to wind up in the 90%. Obviously, we don't want that. That's why we're working on this. Again, it's called MusicMentor.AI. And the first piece is getting all your questions answered, assuming that all your questions can be answered. Great. Now the question is, well, what do you have questions about? How do you know what to have questions about, right?
Mm.
So we can't possibly just leave you on to your own devices to go out there and try to learn from courses and books and all this kind of stuff, right? So we asked, what if, based on you, your personal journey, this music mentor, this literally this AI music teacher gets to know you. It asks you questions just like a real person. It gets to know you, your personal situation, where you've been, what you're struggling with, what your goals are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And literally at any time, no matter what you're wanting to learn, and throughout your entire lifetime, and we call it a lifelong learning partner, throughout any point in your journey, you can literally ask it exactly what you should do to hit, this goal, that goal, how to break through this problem, how to do that, what if I want to do this, and it will actually create for you a little mini course. So like a series of 3, 4, 5, 6 steps that is actually designed to where it builds on each little step builds on each other like a little building block, step by step by step by step, little bite-sized action steps that you do. And by the end of that little tiny mini series, mini course, we call it one level. It's like, getting to the next level in a video game or the next level in your guitar playing or whatever. It's literally like taking the stairs and you get to the next level by the end. So where in the beginning you have this issue or you have this problem or this goal, and the music mentor actually creates for you a custom mini roadmap. In fact, it will create an entire roadmap for you. It will learn. It will teach you different styles. It will teach you different methods, techniques, etc. But let's just talk about the core idea of learning your instrument. And by the way, this will work for any popular instrument. So piano, trumpet, guitar, singing, drums, anything that's popular, saxophone, whatever. This works, right? It's the in my opinion, the goal is that it's going to be the everything app for music. It's the place
Mhm.
that any musician goes to learn music to get their problem solved or to get to the next level. This is it, right? So anyway, it's going to create for you at any time a personalized miniature course or miniature roadmap that's step by step that leads you to that little next level, that little breakthrough that you're looking for. And guess what? You can do it over and over and over and over and over. And you never stop. You never stop learning. You never stop getting better. It gets you better faster than any other method because it's customized and personalized for you, taking into account your personal situation, your learning style, and all the world's musical information. This has never been done before, right? It's always all the musical information previously in the world has always come from one or two sources or a school or something, which is still one source. This is everything. So you get the actual answers to whatever it is that you're looking for, in a way that's, again, no fluff. It's not some like YouTube guru sitting on a screen just talking. It's actual learning steps, step by step by step, exactly what you need to do. So that's what we call the roadmap system. And that is one of the second pieces. So far, we've talked about getting all your questions answered, right? We've talked about having a personalized roadmap for you for whatever instrument that you're learning. What else? What else can we do? What else might people need or want? And there's two more pieces that I'm going to say today. One is, um, in general, there are a lot of things that can assist us with getting better. So, for example, we have the idea of a metronome, or the idea of, I don't know, some other kind of practice, like how about a workout tool, like a gripping tool or something like that. There's all these different types of things that you can have and do, right? So within Music Mentor is also something called Practice Partner. Practice Partner is literally an all-in-one tool, everything you need to assist you with the roadmap, and getting your questions answered along your roadmap to continue getting better and better and better and building your skills. So, for example, in Practice Partner, you'll be able to not only play with backing tracks, of course, that's the easiest thing, but you can actually create tracks on the fly. You can play with a virtual band if you want. You can have virtual jam sessions instantly, like at a click of a button. You can move sliders around and it will change the style, it will change the speed, it will change the tempo, and you can play with that. Anything that you need, there's, like, for example, speed builder tools, things like that. Anything that you need to actually advance, to support your roadmap journey, to support your playing and learning, is in your Practice Partner. It's meant to all be one place. Remember, this is the everything, the one-stop shop, if you will. I hate that phrase, but the everything app for whatever it is that you need to learn music. So that's the third piece. Now, the last piece is the one that I think is the biggest, which is, this is, in my opinion, is what's going to fundamentally change humanity's ability to play music. Okay. So far, just to catch us up, we have get all your questions answered from all the world's musical information by an AI computer who knows you and knows what the heck the answer is. The second piece is having a personalized, for you, step-by-step roadmap that fits what you want to learn, your learning style, your goals, wherever you want to go with your guitar playing. It creates it for you along the way, right? And it adjusts too, wherever you want to go. So the third thing is a Practice Partner. You'll always have someone, quote, to play with, something to support your practice, to get you better, to make sure that you're, developing your technique the right way, you're correcting mistakes, whatever it is that you might previously have needed a teacher for. Now you have a Practice Partner. Now here's the fourth and the biggest piece. So, as I mentioned, let's go way back to the background. As I mentioned, learning music has always been a two-pronged approach. You've always had to learn an instrument, a musical instrument, and you've always had to, quote, learn music theory. At least that's the thought, right? So MusicMentor.AI works to teach you any popular instrument. That's great. But where it's really going to shine is in how it teaches music as a language. So music theory has been the idea, or the pathway of learning music, or at least a perceived pathway of learning music. It's not actually how most people think it is. But instead of making people, let's say, sit down in a classroom and look at charts and notes on a screen and think about quarter notes and eighth notes and like what time signatures, and let me think about the circle of fifths and all this kind of stuff, which almost nobody, 90% of people, don't actually get it, and they can't apply it when they do think about it. It's just this abstract, stuff on paper, symbols and numbers and charts and stuff, right? We created what we call music reality. So the question is, how do pros that never studied music theory, don't know how to read music, Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jeff Beck, Eddie Van Halen, on and on and on and on and on. Actually, most of the popular rock and roll, players, right? Most of the popular guitar players of all time, and a lot of the other musicians from other instruments as well. How are they able to do that? Well, this ties together something from the very beginning of our conversation, which is, number one, humans have the innate desire to express themselves through music and connect with other people through music. That's why we all, sing along in a stadium with a crowd. That's why we all hold hands and sing in a campfire, whatever it is. That's why it's there. It's already there, right? The other thing is, as I mentioned, all humans learn to communicate with their mouth. They learn how to talk before they ever go to school.
Hmm.
So there's a way to learn how to communicate, right? And you actually don't need to go to school to learn grammar and all that stuff to understand how to do it. Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, B.B. King, all those guys are clear proof examples of that. I'm not making it up. It's proof. You can go see it. And you can go research it, look it up. In fact, Eric Clapton's autobiography, he said, I don't know how to read music. He just flat out says it, right? Never has. And so this concept of music reality, what is that? Well, music reality is the equivalent of babies learning how to talk before they go to school. So what I mean is, how do you intuitively learn the language? How does Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, how do they know what notes to hit when they go up on stage? It's this intuitive, it's the reality of music. It's not theory, it's the reality. That's why we call it music reality. And in general, I don't want to get super deep into this just because we don't have time for it today, but in general, music, we listen to music because it creates a feeling in us, and we like the feeling that it gives us. So, music reality is basically an intuitive understanding of how do I change the sounds to get the feeling I want. That's it. It's really, really simple. And we have a system of shapes and colors and sounds and emotions of how we teach you or how we teach anyone to actually understand the language of music, which then unlocks anybody who goes through, let's say, music reality or learns music reality. It unlocks now their ability, if they want to play any instrument, boom, then they have the ability to play any instrument. They can sidestep the quote music theory. They can sidestep the traditional, the blockades, right? The roadblocks that have kept 80, 90% of people from playing a musical instrument. That's why I say we're changing this. And finally, the cherry on top, so to speak, this is actually the fifth part of the technology. This is going to be in the future. We're not quite ready for that. MusicMentor.AI is the first iteration of this, which obviously teaches music reality and lets you learn any instrument. So when you learn music reality, you understand how music works, you get the why behind it all, and then you can apply that to any instrument, right? And the Music Mentor roadmap helps you learn the instrument as fast as possible. Okay, so it's automatically a game changer. But then the next step after that, when we get to VR, learning how to play in VR, then we eliminate the instrument. So we don't even have to play to understand music and get the why behind it and know how to play music. We don't even need an instrument anymore. And pair that with music reality, and literally anybody who can learn how to talk can now play music. And that's why it's going to be such a game changer. And our goal is to have 1 billion music students who have learned through music reality by 2027. But I know that's a lot. I know I went way out there. We went way into the future. So let's roll it back down to MusicMentor.AI, and I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I expected to just chat for 20 minutes on this cool idea. I had no idea that it was like this developed, which is amazing. That's fascinating and incredible. And it's again, as the other side, the music theory schooling guy over here. I always tell people, like anybody that's interested in learning music, and this kind of talks to this idea of music reality. I always tell people that before you start to learn music, you listen to music and you can tell if it's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can all play music. We'd be like, that guy sucks,
Yeah.
or like this doesn't feel like anything. But every now and then you hear something, you're like, I love the way that sounds. That sounds really good. And I feel like as that inspires us to learn music and how to play music, a lot of times we go through the theory and it kind of like uninspires at that point. We forget that way back when we had this innate human reaction, emotion to certain music, certain chord changes, even going from one chord
Mm-hmm.
to another chord. Before learning anything about music, what let's put it this way, why do people listen to music that are not musicians? Like there's something there that
Right.
happens. Like you feel something from it already. That is
Exactly.
absolutely like the actual language of music in that way. That's
Exactly.
that's speaking to people. And I feel like as we start to overeducate ourselves, we forget that it was that simple at one
Mm-hmm.
point. That it was like I knew that sounded cool. Why is it so hard now? I'm like
Mm-hmm.
analyzing what chord extension is that and what inversion are they using? What's in the bass? I don't even know. No, like it doesn't have to be that. And honestly, I'll leave it here just to add to it. I've talked about it before, but I had a lesson with a really well-known guitar player in rock and somewhat metal, but He's really a bluegrass inspired guitarist who found his way into metal. And I had a lesson with him. It was me and one other student. And I went backstage and man, I had prepared because I was nervous. He was really big into like hybrid picking and all kinds of like exotic scales and all of this insanity. And I went back and I was like, okay, show me something. Like, let's learn. And he played an exercise. And I was like, man, that's incredible. I hear like this scale, you're going into this scale. I hear this chord, I hear that chord. And he looked at me and I felt awful because he was just like, I have no idea the words you just spoke. I have no clue what you just said. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know how to read music. I don't even know what the note names are on the guitar. Like, I don't even know what these are. I just play what sounds good, what feels
Mm-hmm.
good. And that was one of those moments for me, like you're explaining, which was like, oh, that's how some of them think. And I had no idea that that's how some of them think. He doesn't even know what I could point at a fifth fret of an E. And he's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know that that's the A note. I have no clue. What's an A note? I don't know. But this whole time, I've been like, how does he do it? And I can't do it. I got to learn. I got to
Mm-hmm.
dive in. No, you don't. So I guess that's my fun stories of reality in the sense of what I've been through and what I've seen. And I agree. I think it's time for a change, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to have this chat today and start to bring it into the open because it was beneficial for me, yes, to go through the typical process that everybody does. But one, I'm a little different. I'm a composer. That's what I went for was composition. We're weird. All right. Just note that the majority of people are not composer brain. I get it. But also just being on that other side, I remember being like, I can't make money. Why? Because I learned for 4 years, 5 years, how to play other people's music, how to write music like other people, and how to analyze every song way too much to where it becomes not
Mm-hmm.
so enjoyable anymore. And I had wished that somebody would just listen to me and have me sit down at a keyboard or a piano and be like, I like these transitions. They mean something to me. Why do they feel that way? How do I develop that? And that be my entire curriculum for 4 years, right? Developing me, not
Mm-hmm.
developing what you think I should be. Developing me is really where I'm at. So I'm for it, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, and why I got really excited when I heard you tease this out a bit. So I guess for me, like obviously you've been working on this for quite some
Mm-hmm.
time. What are next steps? How do people start to like find this, or at least understand where to go to find updates on it as you continue work?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So right now, as you mentioned, we have been working on it for a number of years at this point, and we're working on building the interfaces, getting everything basically where it's functional. Right now, while we're working on everything in the background, if you go to like a grocery store or Sam's, Costco, something like that, they have free samples. So if you go by, the chocolate place, they have a free sample of chocolate where you can taste it. You know what's in the box, and you can choose to get a box if you want to. While the whole machine, if you will, isn't quite ready yet, we do have at least a demo that people can kind of interact with and get an idea. Like, okay, how could this potentially work? Like, what is this? Okay, I see what these guys are working on. And that's also how you can stay up to date with this as well. As we begin to roll this out, we begin to unlock new features, et cetera. In fact, we're actually onboarding here in a couple of weeks. We're going to be onboarding some beta testers. So people who want to come in, who want to try the platform, talk with us. We'll have a small community. We'll be able to talk about, what about this feature? What about that feature? Give us feedback on it. Yes, this works. Yes, that doesn't work. How do we perfect this machine, right? How do we
Mm.
perfect this thing so it is literally the ultimate learning machine? But right now you can go to demo.musicmentor.ai. So that is demo.musicmentor.ai. And I'll say that it is a very basic demo. You need to use a desktop. So open your window, make sure you use a desktop. You can't use this on mobile right now. This is just a little free sample, right? But you can get an idea and you can go there and sign up to be a beta tester if you want to be able to unlock all the features that we talked about today and keep up to date with everything that's going to be coming out. You can do that at demo.musicmentor.ai.
Nice. Yeah. Doing it like a real full blown tech project, man. Going from demo to beta to full release. Look at you. That's amazing. I mean, you need that. I could see why that's beneficial because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you don't want to create the next curriculum that's created for nobody but yourself. So that makes sense. Have as many people in there, get feedback. That's good. I mean, it's super intriguing to me. for multiple reasons. One, obviously, I'm interested in anything education, music based, and especially like really new methodologies behind it, because I think it stands to be updated a little bit. All right, we're still learning from
A lot.
Bach, for goodness sakes. All right, like I went for 4 years of composition, and they were like, "He's the guy. Like this is the guy," and I'm like, that guy, like there hasn't been another one like since that guy that could teach me something new. But yeah, it's due. And also, I just love the fact that we're talking on this podcast all about tech, AI,
Mhm.
all of the ways it's going to impact music industry and musicians. It's just super interesting to see it come full circle in our just chit chats and conversations, to see that we never really considered. We've spoken about it a little bit, but the impact of education,
Mhm.
of music education. So it's just another arm that we're seeing the future of music go into, which is tech, AI, using it for music education and learning. Amazing, really cool stuff. Well, I'll make sure that I put all of the links here for everybody to dig in as well, just in case you missed them. They are clickable in the show notes, so feel free to dig into that and comment. Like if you're in there, if you're having fun, comment. Let us and John know what that feels like. But additionally, a subscribe, okay? Because if you go to comment, it's like here, and the subscribe is like it's just a tiny bit higher, okay? It's just a little bit higher for you to do that extra action. Hands already on the mouse. So, like, I think you could do it. But yeah, make sure you subscribe. Click the alerts. I'm sure that once you roll this out full blown, we'll do a lot more conversations about this,
Mhm.
and I look forward to it and seeing it developing. But I appreciate you being here, man. And it's super exciting to be on this side of our friendship and working with all of these people and hearing a massive impact that you're making and putting a massive effort into making. I love it. So yeah, do it. Do the thing. Follow, subscribe, click, do all that stuff. Make sure you go check out the demo. That's all we got today. I think from there, we will sign off here, John. I'm excited for our next episode, my friend. I don't think people know what's in store as well. We'll just tease that out. But we will see you, and thanks for watching today on the Future of Music podcast.